GM, and welcome to From A to Z. I'm your host, Zombie Shepherd, and today I'm going to do a reading. This is called A Profound Lack of Imagination. You can kind of think of this as the precursor to In the Event of My Demise. The reason being that I wrote this like a month before I recorded those two episodes. And then I kind of put it away and didn't do anything with it. And the reason I didn't do anything with it was mainly because I hand wrote it. I wrote it on a big piece of tablet. I like to do a lot of my notes on these big legal tablets. So I wrote it by hand, and the reason I wrote it by hand is because I just wanted to. I do a handwritten journal and stuff like that, but I wanted to write something. Most of my writing, this type of stuff, I type it. So I wanted to do something handwritten. I think that handwriting is important. I think part of the reason I did it was kind of related to AI in a sense. I have been very... I have a lot of problems with AI. As much as, if you review my content, you'll see how much I loved AI when it was emerging. And I did always have, my feelings about it even then. But those feelings, to me, didn't really stray much farther than they did already when it came to just, pop culture in general and streaming and the direction that I felt like things were going to go anyway. Got Mr. Rusty joining us on the pod today. So I think a lot of my problems initially were oh, this was obvious. And I keep saying that AI was obvious in the eyes of capitalism and in the eyes of things being easily accessible and all of those types of things. Algorithms and generative content go hand in hand. It was inevitable. So in that sense, that was those issues are non-issues because they're not culturally, nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean? I'm a fringe person to say most things on the radio are garbage, and most people don't believe that. Or if they do believe that, the things that they're into aren't much farther away. They're just the things that didn't make it. It's not that most people don't listen to music that couldn't be on the radio because it's just too weird to be on the radio, or just too avant-garde, too explorative, too anti-genre. Or not even anti-genre, but just doesn't exist in that realm. Our ideas of music are so boxed in that, yeah. So in that sense, I saw AI as inevitable, and so my problems with it were tied to capitalism, and they still are in a lot of sense. So if I have problems with the climate parts of AI and the water usage and these huge data centers that displace minorities and dump waste and steal the water from these communities, they're going to do it in Louisiana, and it's going to cause further problems with our water supply. And that's a huge issue, but that is an issue with capitalism. That's not an issue with AI specifically. That's an issue with capitalism. And my other problems, as far as a lot of data being stolen, that is an issue with capitalism. That's, the idea, all of the conversations around intellectual property are conversations around capitalism. We don't really have conversations around intellectual property for the sake of artistic integrity, because when it comes down to it, the artist is never looked out for. These things are for the corporations. Unless the artist is a corporation, then they're not being looked out for by intellectual property rights. Nothing is ever protecting the artist or the integrity of the art. It's always protecting the dollars and the studios and the producers. So our conversations around intellectual property, especially if you're an artist, if you're an anti-AI artist and your artist is around artistic integrity and stuff like that, then intellectual property is not the conversation you want to be having, because artistic integrity is not involved, period. Like, that is a business. Intellectual property is a legal term. So that is capitalism. Anyway, I went into a long rant about AI, which is going to take place in another episode anyway. So let me move on. I didn't think that the climate stuff was going to be such a big deal. Like, I have so many, all of my comments are essentially just like climate deniers. And I have no, I have no sense of leniency for climate deniers and ultra conservatives and like most people that believe in dead end conspiracies. The reason being that basically if your entire premise is, oh, the government is lying about climate change to tax us, and to stop industry and all this other stuff, like, what is your answer? Like, what you're saying, keep going, just keep doing the status quo, because you're not saying, like, it'd be different if you were coming at me saying like, yeah, we need to do something about human rights, and we need to do something about workers' rights, and we need to do something about, humanitarian crisis. But I don't believe climate change is part of that. It's never that person. The person who doesn't believe in climate change doesn't believe in any humanitarian crisis either. Usually doesn't believe in any kind of social values whatsoever. Doesn't believe in anything about, gay rights or racism or any of those things. So they're a denier of everything. So I have no reason to be talking to people who are climate deniers. Like, if you can deny something that is undeniable with numbers and science and facts, then like, I can't talk to you about anything. You are not a person who's able to have a conversation. Like, you are like, it really is like, you are that far from my values that why would I waste my breath on you? You could figure this out on your own. So if you're a climate denier, just stop watching this, because like, I don't offer you anything. I don't value your opinions whatsoever. I do look at the climate thing, if you want to look at it in other ways and say like, yeah, for one, like, there are certainly people for every crisis who are going to take advantage of it to make money. The government is doing that. I don't argue with that whatsoever. I don't disagree with that. Elon Musk is taking advantage of the whole thing. Elon Musk became a billionaire taking advantage of the climate crisis. That doesn't make it not real just because there are grifters. That's the same thing with crypto. And that's what's so stupid about people in crypto who are climate deniers, because this is a legitimate technology and there are grifters attached to it. So just like anything else. Like, that's what pisses me off so bad about people who you are not offering anything to the conversation. You are not looking for human values. You are not looking to make the world a better place. You are just looking to keep the status quo. And in keeping the status quo, you want to abuse people. That's it. You're just hoping to get yours. And every time I write, I talk about people like you who just want to keep things exactly as they are so that you can get yours. Because you hate someone, because you don't like gay people, or you don't like some race of people. Like, your biases allow you to be a climate denier. Like, you don't offer anything. A climate denier, you might as well be a flat earther to me. That's how far from reality you are, because you offer no truth. You don't offer me a truth to say, wow, maybe this climate change thing is fake, and we should do this other thing that's actually more valuable to the human race. You don't offer anything of value. You offer status quo. You offer the same old bullshit. And you are just defending billionaires. You will sit there, like, that's what gets me too, is like, you think Elon Musk is a genius when Elon Musk is just a person who is a grifter of the climate of climate denying. Like, of climate crisis. Like, he basically sees the climate crisis, says, I'm going to try to solve it with EV, and then, like, gets gets made a billionaire on this. So whether or not, if he doesn't believe in climate change, but he's making EVs and he's making rockets to leave the planet, like, make it make sense how your boy, your golden boy, is not a climate denier. At least he wasn't in the beginning. Your boy is, unless he's 100% grifter. So make it make sense. You know what I mean? The other part, I've talked about this before. If it's not man-made, if it's going to happen anyway, then we still need to address it. It doesn't change anything. Like, we still know, like, okay, let's say, for instance, that the climate on its own is just releasing a bunch of extra carbon and it's not industry. Then we need to slow down ours because we can't afford to do it now. If the planet is already doing it, then we need to slow down. We need to stop. We need to pump the brakes and we need to, like, put everything on hold, because if the planet is going that direction, let's not help it. Like, let's not do things that kill ourselves. Like, CO2 is plant food, but we've killed 1.2 billion hectares of forest in the last 125 years. So I can't breathe CO2. I don't know about you, but it's getting hotter and hotter everywhere. And it's not just necessarily a natural occurrence. Like, there's a lot of unnatural things going on. There's a lot of death of species. Okay, and that is not just natural. And yes, some of it can be natural. But once again, if you're not offering, like, we know for a fact a lot of this is not natural. And we know for a fact that even if it is natural, that putting more carbon in the environment and dumping waste in the environment and using up all the drinkable water and using up all the topsoil just to waste that food, because we don't feed anybody with it. We throw it in the garbage. Like, we know how much food waste there is, for instance. So regardless of whether or not it's natural, we're having the wrong reaction. And that's why denial gets us nowhere. Whether or not it's natural or it's unnatural, we have to do something if we want to survive. And it's not just the status quo. So I'm not going to argue with bad faith actors anymore on any of that. Like, it's not happening. Like, you're not offering any forward solutions. You're offering do the same thing over and over. Regardless, we do know that industries are polluting our environment and taking public land, turning it into private property and polluting it. And we, as the people of the world, get nothing for it except to buy the goods that they produce. So I believe in nationalizing all industry. And by nationalizing, I don't mean making it under the control of the government, but making it democratized to the control of the workers. I believe that every industry should be giving money to the people that it employs and to the environment that it surrounds, like, and is surrounding it. If you're not, and I don't mean that's the problem is with politicians right now. Politicians are getting money from these corporations to pollute our environment. They're basically like, oh yeah, the Louisiana politicians don't care. They'll sell Meta a bunch of space to in northern Louisiana and access to water to totally kill those citizens and to steal all the water and make it unlivable situation. And what do the citizens get for it? The politicians get money, but the citizens get nothing. So I think that we need to democratize money and democratize every industry. There should be no industries that are affecting people in which people can't affect those industries. Period. End of story. So if you're mad at me about the climate stuff, I'm coming straight at the industries, regardless of climate. What I'm saying is it doesn't even matter whether or not climate change is happening or whatever. We know the pollution is happening. And I'm saying that the profits of these companies belong to the people of the countries and the areas that they're in. Come at me now. That's it. That's where my beliefs are. So if you don't like that and you don't believe anything like that, don't watch my shit. Period. Like, that's what I'm about. That's my message. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm doing here. Why am I anti-capitalist? Not because I don't believe in money as human coordination technology. See, and this is one of those things that I feel like I have a very nuanced way of seeing it where neither person who's too far left or right is going to see it. And it's also not a centrist take because centrists won't see it either. This is me seeing that, like, it's kind of, you could say, seeing it realistically, but also optimistically. So I understand that economies and I understand science. So in the sense that in order for there to be people, there has to be food. In order for there to be food, there has to be resources. There has to be land. Or, you know, there are alternative ways to grow food. And we already, as is, produce enough food to feed everyone in the world. We produce enough housing to house everyone in the world. We produce enough clothing to clothe everyone in the world. And we are able to do it at a profit. So we could give to the entire world. And I've talked about this a lot. And the only way it's going to happen is if we democratize industry. Private industry is not the way to do it. And, you know, before you come at me as a communist or a Marxist, which I pretty much am, like, I would say I'm not in the sense of, like, I'm not caught up in the ideologies of movements, but I understand the philosophy, and I understand that that's a direction as human species that we need to be going, and that where we came from, more importantly. Like, a lot of, like, Marxist ideology is, it's just native repackaged, you know? Anyway, point I was coming to is knowing that that's the direction we're going to go. Yes, knowing that's the direction we're going to go, like, but there's going to be increments, and that, like, there's science to growing a population and keeping a population alive. We know there's enough, though, is the point I was going through. We know there's enough. We know we're wasting it. We know that the problem is that our ism is capital. The problem is that the number one thought is the money. It's the capital. It's capitalism. If we put something before the money, maybe humanism, I don't know. Like, and I'm not necessarily advocating for that movement. What I'm saying is, when I say all these isms, what I'm saying is directionally, we need to create something new. Marxism, humanism, like, these concepts are directionally correct. We need to create something directionally correct. Capitalism is not it. Like, we need to understand money. Money needs to be the thing that is the communication instrument between the resources and the humans that need the resources. Capitalism places money above both the resources and the humans. And that's super problematic. Money is not important than everything else. Money is just a tool in which to measure value, to measure as an instrument of measurement. That's it. Like, to have our entire world be caught up in literally a dick measuring contest of who can get the biggest stack of greens, like, it's not conducive to a better future. So when I say I'm anti-capitalist, I'm not saying that I'm anti-markets. I'm not saying that I'm anti-economies. I'm not being so, so far into the future and so far left. Is that left? That's my right. So, sorry, I'm mirrored on the screen, got backwards. But yes, I'm not like so far left that I'm saying like tomorrow, right now, we can have a moneyless society. Like, no, that's probably thousands and thousands of years in our future. But we've literally only had capitalism for a couple hundred years in this current form. Don't try to like history whitewash some shit. We've really only had this as an ethos, like very short amount of time. And it is a stepping stone away from, another step of brutalization, essentially. Like, every human coordination level is authoritarianism, and we keep moving farther and farther away from it. And we're still, such a young species and such a young society that we're having growing pains, and we're just so caught up in this mindset of strong central leaders. And even if, a strong central leader is necessary, the way that we choose them doesn't need to be the way we do. And the fact that we're not willing to have conversations around this is propaganda of the system working on you. Like, if you don't want to imagine a better future, then it's because you're afraid that your position or some little piece of advantage or clout or something that you have will be lost in that transition. And you're afraid that that thing you're going to lose is not equal or greater, or you're afraid that it is equal or greater than the thing you're going to gain. And it's just protectionism, it's isolationism, and I've gone on for too long now when I need to be reading this thing. But anyway, that's why this is a precursor to all that. I really do begin, with anybody, like, what are your needs and what are your visions for the future? And if you don't have a vision, like if your vision doesn't care about or include the weakest people, the most disenfranchised people, if you're not thinking about those things, then I don't care about your vision of the future. End of story. Because you can look at it like the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And some people who think about that think, okay, well, then we need to cut out the weak links, which is just destroying your chain. Like, it doesn't even make sense to think that. So you can't cut out the weak links. What you have to do is strengthen them. You do everything you can to make sure that those weak links get the reinforcement they need to not just survive, but thrive. And so I don't care about your point of view unless your point of view has that in mind. That's really what it comes down to in terms of any conspiracy theory or any denial of any political action or any love for billionaires or any of these demagogues. Like, I truly, have never had anyone who pushes these types of ideologies on me who is coming from a good place. I've never had a person who has a good vision for the future come to me with a lot of these things. And that really is why I begin with that, because if you're not a compassionate person, then your vision for the future involves killing people. You want to kill them. You don't necessarily want to know that you're killing them. You want to kill them indiscriminately, and you want to do it all, with the protections of the state. And I view that type of person as morally corrupt. And so therefore I can't in good conscience listen to you at all. No matter how smart you might be about investing or, science even, like, you can be a genius in a lot of things. And if you are a cruel and uncaring and just a person who advocates for negativity and hate, I can't listen to you. End of story. And that's it. And so I automatically have to assume you're that person when you come at me with climate denial, because I've never met a climate denier who cares about people. End of story. And I've never met a person who doesn't care about people who envisions a better future. Meaning, like, the future they envision always comes with the grind and the suffering at the expense of the working class and anybody that needs to be disenfranchised for the sake of the future. And that's kind of why. What I'm saying is, if your vision of the future involves grinding people below the trolley wheels, then your vision of the future is bankrupt. It's morally bankrupt. End of story. I understand that there will always be costs and things will always happen. So I understand the reality. And that's why I say that I understand money as a human coordination tool is a reality for our current system and for our current, even bridging to the next system. So I understand reality. I'm not saying create utopia, so to speak, but we can be aware of our damage. We can be conscious of our damage, and we can do the best to mitigate that damage, especially when the main benefit of doing that damage is just money, which is arbitrary, which isn't real. And if you're hurting people for money, you're a villain. Like, point blank, easy, simple. Money is not important than any human life. And like I said, anybody who can't envision that better future, can't see us getting there without grinding people below the trolley wheels, has a profound lack of imagination and just simply doesn't care and doesn't want to get there. And that's the name of this piece, a profound lack of imagination. Humans have such a profound lack of imagination. We can imagine sci-fi and fantasy, but not world peace. We can imagine vampires and aliens feeding on humans, but not greedy rich humans doing the same. We can imagine space travel and planetary colonization, but not equality of race and gender. All of our political arguments are authoritarian in nature. Both the left and right of our human global Overton window are on the top half of our political compass because the only true mechanism of law and order is the promise of state-sanctioned violence in the form of fines, imprisonment, and damage to reputation. We cannot imagine a future where humans are equal and fair to each other without the hierarchy of authority of powerful people wielding ever larger sticks with which to beat the populations down. The current monetary system we live under, capitalism, particularly global neoliberal capitalism, creates a borderless upper class of rich people that are using every human technological breakthrough as a way to enslave and siphon every dollar away from the working class. And some of us can't imagine a future without them. We're not yet able to imagine a more flat society in which hierarchies are not enforced by tradition and nepotism, but instead enforced by trust, compassion, and true meritocracy. The reason we can't imagine these things is because, as a species, our greatest human coordination tool is state-sanctioned violence. Technology that is open source and created with can't-be-evil safety mechanisms would be a solution, but capitalism perverts every technology towards profit motive over human coordination. We can't imagine a future where technology is used to help people rather than extract as much money, time, and attention as possible. It's easy to hate technology in its current extractive form. It is being used to study you, sell you things, track you across devices, and using all of this data against you in any and every way that will lead you to more profits, more of your time and attention. But technology is the only way forward in order to feed the global population. We know it can be done just based on the amount of food, clothing, and housing that is wasted globally due to intentional inefficiencies in the capitalist distribution of goods. Humans of every socioeconomic status cannot imagine a world in which life is not measured against money. We are so brainwashed around money that we will watch humans all around the world struggling, fighting, and dying, and we will blame a statistically significant number of individuals rather than the violence of the state being used upon innocent human beings in the name of global capitalist expansion by the billionaires and oligarchs that pay the governments to do their bidding. Some people can imagine a ruling class, but can't imagine it's the billionaires and literal richest people on the planet, but rather some other shady cabal with some other unnamed power beyond billions of dollars of wealth. People of every class around the world would rather imagine that they will one day be a celebrity, a millionaire, a billionaire, or a tech CEO that changes the way humans interact, but can't imagine themselves as the self that they are. We can't imagine our own reality and how we are closer to death in the streets than we are to being any form of rich celebrity with which is its own level of serfdom. Celebrity worship and the lust for wealth are symptoms of a society that needs hierarchy and a goal of one day being perceived as better than others. Everyone wants fame, power, and wealth. Therefore, we're okay with the extreme inequality existing and cannot imagine a world where personal improvement and bettering oneself is not rewarded with more people below you in station and thus at your mercy in some way. It has been said that men seek wealth and power so that they can use it to get what they want at the expense of others. But women seek wealth and power to escape being abused. This rings true, but the echo of the gaining wealth and power amongst women is the constant sacrifice of the women below you in station. This is the violence capitalism demands. This is why at every higher and higher rung of the ladder, you can never imagine yourself as being safe from poverty. People insulated at the top still feel unsafe, so they increase their power and inequality grows and the hatred for the upper class and its defenders grow, and danger becomes real. The human species being afraid to imagine a world without hierarchies built on violence, wealth, power, and enforced tradition create a dynamic that can only end in the working class returning the violence that was visited upon them for hundreds of years by a callous and power-hungry wealthy class who can imagine themselves as more worthy of life because of the perceived low-class behavior and culture of the working class across the globe. These cultural traditions and behaviors are survival responses to the lack of value, respect, and dignity that the capitalist system gives towards people that don't have the power or wealth to defend themselves. That is to say that the value of human life, nature, animals, and all of the potential of every field of human knowledge, creative and spiritual endeavors are worth only exactly the measurable value of its subjective quality and perceived scarcity as compared to the current value of fiat currency, which currently defaults to USD as the global reserve currency. There is a dollar amount below which the value of all things can be compared and sold against, and that dollar is losing value every day. Imagine that. The value of every natural creation and every calorie of human labor runs to zero against the dollar, which is running to zero against its own purchasing power. It's not just capitalism that is eating its own tail, but the dollar itself is dragging the world down the toilet because neither side of the political spectrum, which only exists in the top right quadrant of the authoritarian economic right, but even those who are advocating to go far left are still depending on state violence-backed authority as the underlying human coordination mechanism. We cannot imagine a new form of money. We can only imagine new ways to redistribute the money, and under any system backed by state-sanctioned violence, the ultimate outcome will be a group of people that are able to use asymmetric advantage to wield power and wealth against an ever-increasing bottom class of society that cannot defend itself and will be devoured by the machine. The punishment for failing capitalism is starvation, and the cost of survival is running on the treadmill in hopes you can save up enough extra along the way to die in comfort. We cannot imagine any better distribution of all human creation than a hierarchical, nepotistic pseudo-meritocracy ruled by oligarchs, with a rabble class hoping and praying to be close enough to greatness to benefit in any small way. Police and military are class traitors that will allow minor technicalities like nationality, race, creed, and ideology to cause them to inflict violence upon working class people for a meager paycheck. Racism, xenophobia, and homophobia are baited in working class people so that the majority of them will not just be okay with violence, but will actually desire to kill and hurt average people for perceived infractions, which are enforced by a selective conscious and unconscious bias as to what decides a person's value. By criminalizing people based on arbitrary status, you create a mechanism by which to create a slave class. The average person sees nothing wrong with prison labor, and many people don't see anything wrong with police and military killing people for crimes that would never be given the death penalty by a judge. Our need for hierarchy and our fear and inability to imagine a better future allows our personal bias and prejudice to be manipulated into a bloodlust for criminals, other nations, other races, immigrants of any status, creeds, genders, sexual orientation, and ultimately the disabled. Anyone whose value is perceived as a drain on the overall society based on purely subjective and manipulated perceptions will be sacrificed. Money gives us the ability to place everybody on a spectrum of dollar value that is tied to your social value. It is our human need to place categorical value upon humans that allows us to forgive every form of violence the state inflicts upon the masses, the most pervasive and powerful of all being finance. It is our individual desire to be perceived above someone else that allows us to comply with a system that is only serving a select few while sacrificing billions of lives. Beyond a certain level, individual wealth does not bring more happiness or prosperity. This is why you see the rich and famous become demented in their kinks, interests, and goals. Buying elections and killing all competition is not the action of a happy person seeking to innovate and create a better world. It's the actions of someone deeply guilty and afraid that what they are due is coming. Thanks. We'll see you next time.